This session is about aid transparency and climate change and development, an area that I work on foreign assistance and the issues of inequality between the global north and south, and what role foreign assistance plays. Why is climate finance tracking important? First of all, climate finance, why is it important? There were promises made at Copenhagen and Cancun. Most of you know this. $30 billion over 3 years. These 3 years of 2010, 11, and 12 were promised in the Copenhagen Accord. That's called Fast Start Finance. That's a lot of money. But what's really a lot of money is the $100 billion a year that was promised to be scaled up to by 2020. There are all kinds of issues with the definitions in those promises, but if there is $100 billion a year in climate finance by 2020, that will be almost half of foreign assistance, that is official development assistance, if we're at about $150 billion right now, so maybe closer to a third. That's a lot. And the issue of climate change, of course, is important for all of foreign assistance, that is driving new needs among developing countries, the need both to transform economies away from high carbon growth and also to help them adapt to the inevitable impacts and the current impacts of climate change and reduce disasters, as we heard. So tracking that money is extremely important, partly because we have such a fragmented system. There was created at Copenhagen and Cancun in this past December the Green Climate Fund, run through the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, but the problem with it is that currently about 1% of climate finance is going through that channel. Donors are channeling climate funds in different ways, through their bilateral aid agencies and also through the World Bank, the Climate Investment Funds, the Global Environment Facility, and then there are dozens and dozens more. So we have 70 to 100 channels through which this money is flowing. These were political promises, of course, made in Copenhagen and Cancun. So this is important for people to know whether these promises are being met. There has to be a tracking system for it. And to track that aid for climate change, we have to know what counts. And to know that, we have to really understand the issues of how developing countries can adapt to climate change and how they can mitigate their emissions. So this issue of defining adaptation is extremely tricky. An analysis that I've led with the help of the aid data team, and Christian especially, you'll be hearing from soon, we looked at the Department for International Development in Britain, and we found that it varied, depended on how you defined what counts as adaptation, all the way from about 2 or 3% of their portfolio at the time, this was 2008 and 9, all the way to 60 or 70% of their portfolio, whether you used a narrow or a broad definition of adaptation. So a lot is at stake here. So there's this political promise, but we need to know about, and we need to improve the tracking of climate finance for other reasons, namely for accountability, of course, and effectiveness. I believe that this set of tools that you've seen some of this morning applied to climate change could be transformational. And I think some of them could really transform the way that foreign aid in general happens. It's going to be crucial also for coordination of between donors. And if they don't want to coordinate, when they do coordinate, that's great. But then also there'll be the opportunity to use all this information for strategic targeting, as we heard a lot about. So it's critical. For monitoring and evaluation, you've heard a lot about this already. I don't need to repeat. And also for researchers like myself, we're very happy to see this new granularity of the data so we can see whether it's actually working or not. So to get right to the panel, we're going to hear 4 papers. Tom Downing, who's currently at the Global Climate Adaptation Partnership, a company he created, will start us off. We're going to hear Karen Pandey from the World Bank here, the Environment Department, Kate Weaver and Christian Peretzakis from University of Texas, and Taryn Franson from the Open Climate Network and World Resources. So Tom Downing just by way of introduction, I used to be at the Stockholm Environmental Institute for many years in Oxford office in the UK. He's a PhD in geography from Clark University, one of the best departments in the US. And then he's created his own firm now that with this name, Global Climate Adaptation Partnership. He was, if I'm getting this right, previously at, he's worked a lot with African Development Bank. You'll hear some of this. He's worked with KfW in Germany, the European Commission in Europe, and on and on. So anyway, we'll look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, Tom, for coming.